Hello everybody and welcome to the Penelope Possum channel with me, your hostess Penelope the Possum. Today we're going to be reading some creepypasta very quietly so that we don't wake anybody up today. We have The Dismal Rama, written by Michael Page. The editor is not currently known, or not applicable at the moment. No one's edited this. The thumbnail art is by Craig Roshik as usual, and there is no available or currently recorded narration of this. Just a moment. Hello, and welcome. Hello and welcome. So we're reading The Dismal Maw, published on April 12th, 2017. The estimated reading time is 12 minutes. Fuck you, Nathan Keene screamed at his grandmother. Her quivering lips stiffened and sucked into a gasp. Widening glare of her aged vision looked as though they'd popped out of her skull. With all the strength that his little hands could summon, Nathan slammed the door behind him. He could hear Nana calling his name as his Gramps returned to his study with mumbled curses. The seething 10-year-old cut through the neighbor's backyard. He stomped over their vegetable garden and hopped over the small chain-link fence to the street. One of the diamond-shaped wires slipped across his palm and opened a bleeding slit. The sting that followed was fierce, but otherwise ignored by his screaming thoughts. He's made his way past Oak Road and across the street with eyes to the asphalt. Gramps' words rattled inside of him, acting as crazy as his father. An orange Camry deafened him with its blaring horn, followed by an angry woman shouting, "Use both eyes, punk." Nathan raised a miniature yet powerful middle finger to the driver's bumper. Screw everyone, he thought. Screw everyone in the world. This is where his mother left him, with his grandparents, shoved in Leo County's Fat Rolls, Tallahassee. Nana said she needed a mommy break from it all. Of course, after all the shouting, all the sleepless nights, she needed a mommy break. So here he was, pawned off like forgotten luggage from an airport's baggage carousel. She was out there enjoying the vintage of life. She was out there soaking in the laughing sun. She was out there happier without him, happier without Dad. Bitter tears pooled within the purple ring that encircled his bruised eye. A memento received last week. The shiner was given to him by a Marcus Meal, an 8th grader in his neighborhood, with the athletic build and looks of Popeye's Bluto. Marcus spent his afternoon waiting for the school bus around the corner alongside Miss Pitt's posse of skinny jeans and sagging asses. Once that yellow hinged door folded open, he was a line deciding which prey had the weakest windpipe. It made him feel alive. As though the bus were an enormous capsule filled with a limitless antidepressant. But on the day he took Nathan Keene for a wounded gazelle, the dosage fought back. Sidewalks led Nathan to the gated entrance of Hollow Park, a mature chunk of characteristic land amidst many homes in the community. Beneath its underlying layer of soft rock were subterranean drainage systems that formed caves. Landscape was pockmarked with sinkholes, dry and wet, shallow and deep. His shoes scuffed the grit that permeated the sloping path. He felt happier here, hidden beneath the growths that kept the May heat from beating him. Time felt elusive and life felt fair. Nobody could hurt him here. He crossed a small bridge Dad once tripped over and peered into the soft stream. This was once their park. Every other spring they'd always come back here while visiting his grandparents. The memories felt pleasant at first, but soon started to sting again. Those were the nights he could sleep, before the dreams became clots of empty spaces, every night accelerating and expanding into a gnash of dark energy like a galaxy without stars. No oxygen, no solid ground to tread, only the titanic darkness, hungry darkness that fed on his house, his room, his father, until everything inevitably disappeared. Yes, the park was where he disappeared as well. Temporarily, of course. Wouldn't be difficult for everyone to guess where he ran off. Soon they'd all come running, sorry for what they put him through. Gramps would apologize for being an asshole. Nana would make her ambrosia pudding. Mom would see that her son wasn't baggage. Dad would come back home. His plan was flawless. Just right of him, near the restrooms, the pathway he was on led guests to the park main loop. The sinkhole trail. Any visitor could look straight down the throat loop like chutes, see an array of colored pools. You could watch rushing water disappear and then pop up again in a river rise. Wooden posts announced your arrival at each sink, as well as its given name. The surrounding trees were marked with green blazes that guided hikers to each site. I'll be right back. Biscuit. I'm back. Let's see. The surrounding trees were marked with green blazes that guided hikers to each site. Nathan scratched his head and pondered. Where could he wait it out? The painted blazes would lead him down a flight of stairs toward the shriveled sink. Just beyond there, the trail rose up to an overlook of Spinner Sink. He could then slide down the path and circle left to Virtue Springs. Then an idea struck him like a freight train. Within the luscious green organs of Hollow Park was a body of water separated from the collective path, a gaping sinkhole called the Dismal Maw. Hidden beneath its dirty black water was a pit plummets deep into the earth. Deep, lightless catacombs branch out for miles and also connect to Virtue Springs. There was his answer, the pay dirt he needed. He knew exactly where to find it too. On occasions where his mother didn't join them, he and his father wandered off the trail to see the sinkhole themselves. They weren't overly impressed with the white drink of water, but his father enjoyed humoring the title. Mom disagreed with him. So far it seems like a bratty little kid who can't come to terms with the fact that his parents don't love each other anymore. Nathan recalled all the times Nana warned him to steer clear of the Dismal Maw. The path leads you away from that sinkhole because it isn't safe. Children, especially you, should never play near there. The soil is very loose. Hi, Shandy. We're in the middle of reading a creepypasta. Very loose and may collapse beneath your feet. I'm gonna reread the whole sentence. The soil is very loose and may collapse beneath your feet. It is not a good place for kids to be. This was the only way he could make his mother understand, really understand. He wanted the weight of his world to compress her shoulders. He wanted the hot glowing embers that burnt his heart to singe hers. He wanted her to watch the sullen crevasse of empty space gouge her dreams every night. Nathan brushed away an escaping tear with his knuckles. Scrapely followed the green blazes to the steps, lowered into a depression with a wooden post, read in large white letters, shriveled sink. He crossed the observation deck, provided a clear vertical view down the slender chimney to sloshing down water. He idly wondered if tossing in a coin would earn him a wish. The trail climbed out of the crater and began its curvature towards Spinner Sink. Brown eyes traced along the sides till he found a cutaway, his father discovered. He paced his sneakers over the brushes of wine grass that tickled his legs. Ahead of him was the oval of rock they both pissed on once. I'm gonna reread that. Ahead of him was an oval rock they both pissed on once. Not too much farther past that, where the magnolia trees resembled his teacher's hairdo. I'm gonna reread that with the correct word. Ahead of him, not too much farther past that, were the magnolia trees that resembled his teacher's hairdo. Before long, he arrived. The sinkhole stretched 40 meters, with a cascade of plants growing along its bowl-shaped walls. A bent cypress tree loomed over the edge he stood on. Its branches curled like puppet fingers over the black water. dead leaves voyaged across the surface. Nathan wrapped his fingers around the brown. I'm going to reread this. Nathan wrapped his fingers around the brown-gray bark and slid cautiously down the shallow slope. Dirt caked into its rubber soles and smeared over the white laces. A few rocks were dislodged and sent bouncing into the pond, falling forever beneath the dark. He stopped himself just a few inches from the moss-stilled blackness and sat into the soil. Crazy Gramps shouted, acting as crazy as his father. The thoughts bounced, bent, and shattered, so his brain were a small blender, and he could just unplug it for a while. That would be nice, almost too nice. He clasped a handful of wet pebbles encrusted with dirt and skidded them across the water. White ripples pulsed over one another in seams. Who are you? A voice asked abruptly. Nathan sprung up and nearly slipped feet first into the sinkhole. The question wasn't demandingly spit by an adult. It was calm and spoken with childlike curiosity. His brown eyes combed the pit's soil-lined walls to the surrounding rim. Was he followed here? No, nobody was here. Until I looked down. A face stared up at him, bobbing out of the black water. Nathan froze. Looked like a boy's face. His skin was moon white, with the grime caked around the chin and ear tips. Strands of his short blonde hair swayed and danced beneath the surface. The water was too shady to spy any white neck or flowing clothes below him. He looked like a pale island, with closed lips carved in the dry land. The face then blinked and set its bluebell eyes to the corners, facing him. Are you crying? Nathan wiped his eyes and picked up his nerves to an unmoved bravado. No, he scoffed. You aren't supposed to swim in here. The boy's gonna reread that. The boy's soaked eyebrows perked. But I swim here all the time. It isn't so bad to me. His eyelids wilted like partially closed curtains, as though he were about to suck in a heavy yawn. Why are your cheeks red and your eyes puffy? One of them is black, too. Nathan ground his teeth and now felt self-conscious. This kid had some nerve showing up uninvited and now examining him? Was he on trial on something? I wasn't crying. What do you care? I do care. Why? We've never met before. Nathan's stare became slits. Good point. I'm James. The face winded up its lips into a misshapen smile. Waiting for someone? Nathan scowled inwardly. The boy named James was strange, weird-looking, and very nosing. Yet behind that odd persona was a pleasant voice, which baffled him the most. My mom left me here. I don't know for how long. Maybe forever. The thoughts carried air pockets through him, threatened to rupture with anger. Oh! James' inquisitive look melted. My parents left me here too. A new weight carried his voice. Curiosity veered Nathan to back to those blue eyes. Why? He asked. They went away without me. I thought we were happy, but things always change. James heaved a gloomy breath. The world ends with change, doesn't it? In that instance, Nathan didn't feel alone. In the most ironic of all places, his inner wrath simmered to a mild boil. Yes, the old ball was right. Change meant the finale of everything. Adults did it all the time, because they didn't hear it. They can't hear it. The cries tugging at their pants from the floor. All that matters is them and only them. He couldn't peg a word for what he was feeling, but an adult would have called it empathy. I'm Nathan. James' sinking expression reanimated. I'm gonna reread that. James' sinking expression reanimated. It's a pleasure to meet you, Nathan. Parents treat us all the same, don't they? Nathan nodded. Then we lost boys should stick together, right? Nathan nodded. A pallid hand rose to the surface with wrinkled fingertips that presented themselves. What do you say we shake on it? He offered. Oh boy. Nathan leaned over the pond and extended his arms to reach. The hand snapped forward and seized him. James smiled withered. Thick pain welled from his wrist and twisted like an Indian burn. Grip plunged his hand into the black water. A paralyzing chill kissed his cut palm, as though his veins were becoming icicles. In his mind, he yelled, "Let me go," but his voice box shriveled. His free hand snatched wildly in the air for anything solid enough to cling to. Freezing pain was pausing. I'm going to reread this. Freezing pain was prodding his submerged arm and climbing higher. This had to be a prank. A sick prank by that weird boy played on stringers. His roaming fingers caught something coarse and flaking. The drooping tree. He bent and dug his nails into the bark. With a good yank, he managed to wrench his arm out of the murk. Then he saw what had a hold of him and felt his mind derail. What followed out was a cluster of branch-like tentacles noosed around his arm. They resembled vines that were dripping and dead. The rotten smell from their smooth, gluey membranes induced vomit. Mental paralysis set in. His sanity untethered and drifted to freedom. Somewhere far away from this. Yes, can I help you? Take the toast. I'm gonna continue my reading. The face that jutted from the abysmal water. Rereading. The face that jutted from the abyssal water was no longer James. Its milky skin sank to bluish green with prominent, flabby bruises. Both blue bell irises were engulfed by pupils that were dilating like spilled ink. What's the matter, Nathan? It crooned from receding lips and deformed teeth. I thought you were a lost boy. No, it wasn't a voice at all, just sputters and gargles from water-clogged lungs. Nathan's fingers slipped from the callous grooves. Raw tentacles dragged him towards the watery fissure. Sneakers dug into the earth to cement himself from the sticky knots unrelenting pull. Black jelly that had once been its eyes drained into their sockets. The bruised bags of flesh slumped and split apart, releasing putrid bile. Green ichor infused with the black water and floated atop its surface like oil. Streaks. The weak skin further dissolved into greenish foam that reached the sinkhole's rims. Its ears, nose, cheeks, and lips all became liquefied mass to feed the cesspool. But the voice did not melt away. It rung like a siren from the discolored skull's splintered fibers. Come inside. Loneliness is over and never coming back. I'm calling for you. We're all calling for you. Nathan, Nathan, Nathan.
There's a foil-wrapped plate of food in the fridge.
Yes, Jess left it here on accident.
Ah, okay.
She also left her socks here on accident. A pain was being ignited in Nathan's shoulder. With every violent jerk and tug, the intestinal fire outspread. It couldn't be contained. Bones started to torque. His threshold of pain erupted from a churning pop from the socket. He hoisted his neck and bawled mindlessly into the tree tops. The world had become fuzzy red greens. His mind short-circuited. In a gasping, broken voice, he cried for help. He cried for his mother, his father, his grandparents. Somewhere within the collapsing halls of his consciousness, a speck of solidarity was screaming, yelling, but he couldn't hear anything. Being drowned out by the amalgam of screams. Children's screams. They wafted from the dismal wall in a choir of mindless pleas and indiscernible moans. Come inside. Meet the family. We're all lost boys and girls here. It hurts to fight, doesn't it? Just let go. Why fight it? It jerked him ever closer to the dark green froth. Every sense of feeling left in his dislocated shoulder. I'm gonna reread this. Every sense of feeling left in his dislocated shoulder. One more time. Every sense of feeling left his dislocated shoulder in a numb veil. Howls of wailing children invaded his eardrums. He could gaze straight down into the maw's gullet now. One more time. He could gaze straight down into the maw's gullet now. No reflection stared back. Only empty space. Yes, the infinite empty space that waited for him. The darkness was coming closer. Hungry darkness. Horrific reality pitted his fleeting world. He was all alone, isolated from everyone. His parents' silhouette waned on the horizon. You're slipping. I can feel it. The pain will stop, I promise. Aren't you tired of them hurting you? Leave your parents behind, just like they did you. Nathan's strength abandoned him. His body glided over the rim, dropped headfirst into the tainted fluid. Sharp chills stabbed every nerve they could reach. The water shot into his ears and nostrils. Invisible rip currents sucked him further into the void. His lungs contracted and felt like they were tearing open. I'm going to reread that. His lungs contracted and felt like they were tearing open. Screams bubbled out of his throat. "Wake up," he begged. "Wake me up, please." The tide drew him lower into the most suffocating temperatures. Deeper he sank from the oval-shaped twilight that shrank above him. Inevitably, everything disappeared for Nathan King, until all that remained was the bottom he'd never reach. The countdown commenced in Hollow Park. A group of kids ranging from 10 to 12 scattered. Cindy frantically separated from the both of them. Their hysterical giggles and hushes would surely get her caught. The gray sky looked like bundles of fine lint. She formed a mental map of all the dead giveaway spots. Be it seeking or hiding, she was the best. But this time, Jerry Breyer was it. And Jerry Breyer is a cheater. Of course, he thought the opposite was true. Every cheater always did. Her mom told her so. Squinty eyes is pinking while she counts. He whined every time it was her turn to find everyone. It was his favorite nickname for her. It used to make her cry, but it is since diluted to a faint annoyance. Close second was the obnoxious reminder of what his father called her mom, Miss Nip. She hated every atom that boy was made of. But this time, it would be different. She'd wipe the floor with him. She crossed an old jeep road and circled right around 3 dark throats of Sabal Singh. Where it used to look clear and blue before groundwater contaminated by nitrate seeped its way through Tallahassee's loins over the years. 30, her instincts warned. Definitely reached 30 by now. Out of time. She leapt over a family of wildflowers and abandoned the trail. There was no doubt he'd heat seek her. The first one caught was branded the worst hider of the bunch. That was the glowing red iron Jeremy Breyer reserved with her name on it. Cheaters are the scum of the earth. None of them deserved even a thread of sympathy in this world. That's why her father left for Osaka when she was 3. Her mom told her so. She stopped. There were bands of bright yellow in between trees, tangled around the trunks. Police line, "Do not cross," was scribed in pitch-capped letters. Caution tape. She'd seen it before, mostly downtown, for strayed voltage warnings. Why Apollo Park, though? Curiosity overwhelmed her as she maneuvered past the barricade. The earth in front of her dipped into a round crevasse, a pool that resembled tar gathered at the bottom. It was a sinkhole. But not just any run-of-the-hill sink for tourists to gawk at. This was the Dismal Maw, She and the others used to play here a lot before the accident 2 years ago. The body of a 10-year-old was discovered by a hiker named Barry Moss, who heard the toddler's screams. By the time he had arrived, the boy had reportedly fallen in and drowned. Ever since, parents and authorities have cracked down even harder with Hollow Park safety. Mom didn't have to know, though. Everyone else would be too chicken, especially Cheater Breyer. How could she throw away this trump card? She mindfully slid down the incline towards the dark water. Cindy knew all the stories. One more time, Cindy knew all the stories that swashed around the Ma's lips. Lori Hudson says it was caused by a meteorite, and their city was built around it. Billy Bracken says it's a witch's house. Billy Bracken says a witch's house once stood there before she cast the wrong spell and caused the earth to swallow her. The fattest grape in the vine was that the sinkhole was haunted, riddled with human bones inside its limestone cavities. Remains from an old graveyard that was built over the terrain before sinking into the earth and being swallowed whole, souls and all. The pit plunged so deep into a lightless shaft that no ghost could ever swim out of. But Cindy knew they were all just flim-flam stories. She waded in the dirt and traced white creases in the still water. "Are you hiding?" someone asked. Cindy panicked, expecting to find someone trying to leech her for a spot. Her monolid eyes met a small face that plopped out of the black. It was a boy that looked like a glistening sheet of white. Droplets of water sailed down his black brows and pasty cheeks to rejoin their kin. She'd never seen him in the park before. "Are you hiding?" "Oh no, just admiring the nothing, that's all." "Yes, I'm hiding. Are you gonna rat out on me?" She groused at him. "What do you mean?" The boy looked confused, as though an invisible hand scratched his drowning hair. "Shh!" Cindy blew a finger against her lips. "Haven't you ever heard of hide and seek before? I'm hiding. Someone else is looking. Get it?" His puzzled stares lit up. "Oh, I love that game. Can I play too?" Cindy crossed her arms. "As long as you don't cost me this spot, I don't care, but you have to be quiet." "I can do that." "Good." She smiled, her voice dimmed in a whisper. "My name's Cindy. What's yours?" She watched the corner of his mouth turn up in an asymmetric smile. "It's nice to meet you," he quietly trilled, his bluebell eyes broadened with excitement, a grim black and blue ring enclosing one of them. "I'm Nathan." And that was The Dismal Mall. Once again, this was written by Michael Page. There are very few grammatical corrections I make to this, but otherwise it was a great read. Completely didn't expect the ending there. Goodness. One more. Okay, here we go. Dark Shadows Rising. Written by Irving Crane. Edited by Craig Groshik. Thumbnail art by Craig Groshik. No available narrations to date. Published on January 27th, 2021. Estimated reading time 20 minutes. Rating 10 out of 10 from 2 votes. Paul nearly jumped out of his skin when he realized that his little sister was standing right next to him. He was focused like a laser, writing the next horror short that the Dark Shadows Writing Thing podcast was demanding. The closer the deadline loomed, the more focused he became. Dark Shadows wasn't known for generous allotments of time for the writers. And there was Cassie, in her oversized pink headphones, staring at her brother who nearly messed himself. Jesus, Cass, what's wrong? The story is to be done tonight. They ruined your story again, the 7-year-old said. Oh God, again? I'm sorry for getting mad. Thank you for letting me know. She nodded and walked off. One more time. She nodded and walked off. Paul turned his phone off the charger and was about to dial out when he stopped. Better make sure he knew what was going on. He hit up YouTube and found the Dark Shadows Rising channel. Okay, there was a video of his story being narrated, and his name was missing for the credentials again. He listened. The voice of the narrator, who pronounced the R's as badly as his little sister, droned over the prose with the vibrancy of a gerbil turd. It took Paul a minute to recognize the story as his own, not just because of the awful performance, but also because of how heavily edited and altered it was. He made a mental note to make it up to Cassie by buying her some candy or something. He dialed out on his phone. The nasal voice he expected picked up on the other end. Hello? What the actual fuck, Tyler? I just listened to the first 7 minutes of the Grizzly Grotto and you can't even tell that it's my story. Gerbil turd, yeah. This is the 4th time you've gone back on your promise that you'd stop fucking with my writing. A flatulent sigh filled his ear. If you'd write better stories, they wouldn't need to be fixed. What? Paul spat. I said... What? I fucking said... No. I don't know who you think you are, but you don't go putting your hands all up in my stories, panties, like you're some fat kid in a cake shop run by a blind man. I don't bust my ass to give you 3 stories a day just so you can butcher them and put your name on them. You'd have 0 exposure if it weren't for my podcast. Get back to work, and I better have some fresh stories to read by the time I have my bedtime, you hoe. I have a better idea, you narcissistic lard ass. I'm taking every last story I have in the works, and I'm taking all of them to chilling tales and dark frights. Paul could hear the jaw drop on the other end of the line. That's a breach of contract. I specifically had you agree that you would never... Yeah, well, you broke every last agreement you made with me by fucking with my stories. Eat tampons and wipe your balls with sandpaper, you shit-snorting slug. I hope you end up producing your smegcast in hell. Jesus Christ, can we get a break, please? The call ended before Tyler could retort. His brain was ringing like a gong that had been thumped with a cannonball. Paul could have just called his mom a whore or something, but no. He He took it all the way to submitting his stories to that show. Stories that were meant for Tyler, deserved by Tyler. Red rage seized him and he tried to ring up Paul 12 times in a row. Last 8 attempts had gone straight to voicemail. Tyler found Paul on Facebook. Took a screenshot of the scrawny, chainless teenager's profile. And prepared a grievance-laden social media post in the form of a meme. It would be plastered all across Dark Shadows and Rising social media accounts and would also be a part of the announcements in the next show. The nerve of these kids that don't appreciate what he does for them. Not only were they getting free exposure through his stellar horror podcast, he was taking the extra step of saving their stories from themselves. Those weren't stories that they handed him. Those were wishes, hopes of getting in Tyler's level that never stood a snowball's chance in Granada, not without his help. As much as help as those stories needed, it only made sense that Tyler would get the byline for them. He checked the stats on the contested video. 24 hours had been viewed by just 2 people, Paul and Cassie. And the view count would stay that way for 2 weeks. The only counts that ticked up were shots that Tyler had knocking back. The only counts that ticked up were the shots Tyler started knocking back each night. When he got inebriated enough, he could look at the Chilling Tales channel without getting nauseated. View counts were astronomical. The comments were all attaboys, awesomes, and keep making mores. You might not be so bitter about it if Chilling Tales hadn't turned down his own submissions to their channel. Tyler thought it would be a good way to get some more exposure. Surely that was all Dark Shadows Rising needed. A beacon bright enough to let a beacon bright enough to let the world know he was there. Well, every story he submitted flopped. The rejections were polite but firm, sending the clear message of, hey, this writing isn't good enough. Yes, it is, he would fire back, but there was no answer. That was more or less when he started hitting the bottle harder than usual. It led him down a rabbit hole of scoping out the people being Chilling Tales, especially the CEO. People called the guy by his first name on the Chilling Tales social media outlets, Gary. He searched Gary, Chilling Tales, and Dark Frights, and voila, just like that, there was his personal Facebook profile. Too easy. So from then on, Tyler drank. He looked up whatever Gary had visible to the public. In the aftermath of Paul Matthews, tonight would be one of those nights. He eyed the view count on Chilling Tales' most recent video, just to make his intestines burn. And oh, what in the name of almond-studded shit was this? The story that was grossing stats the fastest was written by Gary's son. So Gary cleared a story written by a 9-year-old, but wouldn't clear any of Tyler's? Gary was looking at the same stats at the exact same time and having quite the opposite reactions. Wowzers! He chuckled to himself before calling his son. Hey Conan, your story's blowing up. The 9-year-old boy is dark-eyed with eyes as dark as his hair, raced into his dad's office and gaped at the PC screen as if he understood what the graphs and numbers meant. I think we have an up-and-coming star author in the family, Gary said as he put his arms around his son's chest. Can we celebrate? Conan asked. We're already celebrating your birthday in a few days, you little opportunist. I didn't have to be good at anything to be born, Conan said. Okay, you got me. Dad'll drum up something for tonight. Gary patted his son on the back. He was either going to be an author or a car salesman. As soon as he ruffled Conan's hair and let him run off, his email alert dinged. Nothing new, 80 emails a day was typical. He opened it right away. From Dark Shadow Looming to Gary Kosher. Subject Conan. Where is Conan? Be careful with who you wake up. Some people don't play by the rules. And now that little fat Conan is... Oh my god, shut up. To get what has been coming to you in your devil-worshipping tribe of misfits, Satan will not prosper. Neither will you. Rip Conan. Gary blinked and adjusted his glasses. He had only put his son in the spotlight a month ago when the boy was writing a story he made. What, one announcement? Hey, my son is writing a story. I'm proud, blah, blah, blah. And then it got produced with a full cast treatment, soundtrack, and sound effects. Now this. Gary was used to nut jobs. This missive carried a little extra weight since it threatened someone he loved instead of just him. Still, he knew better. Maybe he'd turn it into the police later. Maybe he wouldn't. He went downstairs to have lunch with his family. His wife was off work that day and they didn't miss a chance to eat together. They had BLTs. Conan's sandwich was more B than anything else. Would you like some bread with your bacon? Nina said to her son as he chewed through an enormous wad of meat. Gary's phone dinged. He checked it just to keep it from sitting in the back of his head. His chewing slowed down when he saw the message. From Dark Shadow Looming to Gary Kosher, subject untitled. Let's start playing games with your family, starting with Conan. We're really going to fuck your shit up. Neither will be next. Fuck you and your Satan-worshipping family. This will never be over, and you'll regret ever getting involved in this twisted community. What's wrong? Nina said, reading her husband's face. Well, here, take a look. He handed his phone to his wife, lines between her eyebrows clenching as she read. Are you going to call the police? I've gotten threats before. It's always dumb kids being trolls. Okay, sure, but are you going to call the police? Gary gnawed his bottom lip. Tyler woke up after he passed out on the sofa. Hangover kissed him good afternoon by pounding nails into his skull. He sat up and mentally reviewed all the emotions he had cycled through while under the influence. Then he remembered something he had hoped had just been a dream. When he checked his email, it hadn't been a dream. He really did create an alternate email account. He really did change the name of his primary email only slightly for said new account. He really did fire off 2 threatening emails to the CEO of Chilling Tales and Dark Frights. He really did take it to the point that Gary was on notice that his wife and son were both targets. He was proud of himself in a way. But he also knew that if caught, he wouldn't find the food he likes in prison. He spent the most of the afternoon and early evening rocking back and forth, contemplating his next move. He decided he was going to go through with it. The threats were made. The cat was out of the bag. So you know what? He was going to do it. He was going to find a way to make good on his word. It's only a matter of time before some very gifted member of law enforcement made a connection between dark shadow looming and dark shadows rising. He had a few guns, but these days you could pull a fingerprint from a bullet. He'd have to do this job with something hands-free. His coffee stable was packed with papers in varying states of decay. A corner of one paper poked out, showing a hint of a crayon drawing. He knew what it was. It was a drawing he did of his D&D character, a necromancer that raised the dead and had them do his bidding. He pulled the character drawing from the pile and stared at it. An inspired smirk twisted his lips. I have a bad feeling about this. It was rather terrifying just how easy it was to get on the dark web. It was even more terrifying how easy it was to find dealers in the sort of field Tyler was interested in. It was like following signs downtown to a particular eatery. Tyler was looking for something that would let him see what his foe was up to. Maybe he'd be happy to just shake him up a bit, or maybe, you never know. With a little help from the bottle, he might work up the nerve for something more serious. But for things first, he needed something that gave him better eyes than any mini camera. Something that he wouldn't have to install in Gary's house himself. He found someone that was offering an assortment of mystical goodies. There was only one of each kind, including only one crystal ball. It was advertised as the real thing, and it was selling for an astronomical sum. He wondered if even Gary sought that kind of money. He tried to haggle. The seller would make do with an offering of some kind. Offering Tyler's person. An eyeball, a kidney, a toe, or a finger. He talked the teller down to 2 liters of semen. Important stuff in certain obscure circles of witchcraft. Tyler had a harder time meeting the quota than he thought. But meet it he did. He just wouldn't be walking for a while. The crystal ball eventually arrived, and Tyler took it out for a test drive. Mere act of holding the item in his hand sent a strange tingle through his fingers down his palm. He focused his intention and his malice into the heart of the sphere, like he was trying to birth a new star in the coldest depth of space. First, there was a twinkling blue light like a blue ember. I'm gonna reread that. First there was a twinkling light like a blue ember. Then there was movement as if being viewed through a peephole. Then there were faces. Gary walked down the frozen aisle looking for the ice cream he knew his son would eat. It was a delicate task. Conan was a picky eater when it came to sweets, and his wife was the same. Placing both of them at the same time was often a lost cause. His phone dinged twice. Both of them were email alerts. Both of them were from that Dark Shadows clown. There were pictures. The first was a picture of Gary. He was in the grocery store, looking down at his phone, just like he was at the moment. He looked up and all around him. He didn't see anyone. The second picture was the signal that set off the fire alarm. It was a picture of Conan. The part that especially made Gary's blood run cold was that Conan was wearing his red Power Rangers shirt. He was dressed the same way that he was the last time Gary had seen him at home. All caution and rationale left him, and he yelled out, drawing the attention of everyone around him. "Security! Hey, someone alert security!" His eyes whipped around in all directions. The bastard had to be nearby. He looked for anyone that was in too big of a hurry to leave the store, but he got nothing but confused faces looking at him, waiting for the next move. He felt like he was the one that looked suspicious, running up and down the aisles with a wild look in his eyes. He was going to be a good God damned if whoever was doing this got out of the store. He waited by the front exit. Surely the guy would come past here. Or would he? Were there other exits? Would he know about them? Did the creep pull this little stunt because he knew the layout of the store so well that he knew he could give Gary the slip no matter what? Gary's mind raced in circles that led nowhere faster and faster. Someone that looked like a manager was starting to give him the cold stare. "Is there a problem, sir?" he said as he approached. "I just got sent some crazy pictures. I think I'm being stalked. My son is being stalked." The manager clearly wasn't in the mood. He made sure that Gary wasn't carrying any merchandise that might try to make a sneaky exit. "Hello?" Out the door. I'm gonna reread. He had to make sure Gary wasn't carrying any merchandise that might try to make a sneaky exit out the door, and then escorted him to the service desk to make some phone calls. The police were on their way. While he waited, Gary rang up his wife. "Hey, honey, what's the matter?" "Make sure you know where Conan is right now." "He's on the Xbox right behind me." "Okay, lock every single door in the house. Don't open the door for anyone that knocks, not even me. I'll call you to let me in on your phone, okay?" "Gary, you're scaring me." "The guy that sent those emails knows where we live. I'm about to talk to police. Just lock down the house. Please, I love you and be home soon." Gary eventually saw the broad rectangular headlights of a cop car pulling into the parking lot. The officer was a stereotype, down to the sculpted and symmetrical handlebar mustache. He took off his hat and noted the manager and to Gary. "I'm Officer Colton Phelps. Did I hear something about a stalker?" Gary unloaded, burying the officer and everything that happened. The close of the conversation and the trip home went by like a black and white movie. The vodka bottle was empty before Gary knew it. The bags under his eyes were turning dark and about to droop low enough to tickle his knuckles as they rested his keyboard, and he just wasn't sure what to do. How many friends did he really have? He had followers, but exactly how many true friends? The kind of people that you could confess a murder or an infidelity or a theft to and they'd listen to you without judging. He thought of all the authors he signed contracts for licensing, for contract creation, for ghostwriting, for narration. He was probably on the phone with them more often than he was with family, purely out of necessity, of course, but there was still that huge time commitment he made to all these people, sometimes at the expense of sleep. And were any of these his friends? After closing each and every social media post with "thank you" and "I love all of you," how many of them were actual friends? All he knew was that he felt lonelier than he had ever felt before. He isolated himself. He felt isolated from his wife and kids since this dark shadow clown seemed to have power to know where any of them were and do whatever he wanted. All Gary had to do was shut his eyes for too long or be gone from the room for too long. He could be holding them in his arms 1 second, turn around and find them gone. God. And who would be able to help him with any of that? He felt even more isolated, more alone. Still, what he learned in business still applied. You can't just sit there. So he posted across social media. He displayed the hostile emails and added a polite plea for help in whatever form the reader could afford, especially legal help. The outpouring of support was instantaneous. It was mostly words, thoughts, and prayers. Well, I hope this happens. I hope that happens. That's horrible. I can't believe people are like that, and so on. There were a few people that were in some tier of legal work and offered to do some work on Gary's behalf for free. Gary read all of it, but it didn't feel any better. "Daddy?" Conan said. The sound of his voice made Gary jump. "Conan, buddy, you okay?" "Mommy says she's really worried about what could happen to us." "I'm going to reread that. Mommy says you're really worried about what could happen to us." "I am, buddy, I am. I'm trying to see if I can find anyone that can help us, so I don't have to worry." "Are the police on the job?" Gary chuckled, but tried not to blow fumes in the kid's face. "Yes, the police are on the job for sure." Conan hugged his father, burying his head in his chest. Gary fought back the sting of tears. He could feel his son breathing, yet he felt so far away and vulnerable. The walls around him felt thin and transparent. The soft alert sounds of several social media accounts were dinging across at a steady rate. "Run along, okay? Daddy is gonna be up a while working on making us safe." Conan nodded and left the room. Gary peeked around the corner to make sure his son made it safely to his room. What he was afraid of happening in the hallway he didn't know. He collapsed into his shriveled chair and heaved a sigh, readying himself for looking through more comments and reactions that wouldn't change things one bit. Or would they? One comment stood out. It was on Twitter. The username was nothing but special characters. It was a simple comment, but somehow pregnant with import. Would you like them taken care of? Gary smirked to himself and replied through his sagging filter. Law enforcement is all over it. What can you bring to the table? A hitman? The response was in seconds. More like a little black magic. Gary pinched the bridge of his eyebrows and shook his head. Sure, lol, was all that he replied. The other replied with a thumbs up emoji. Gary checked the thread later and noticed the strange comments had disappeared. He didn't think much of it at the time. Tyler cackled to himself. This was by far the greatest story he had ever written. The characters were bowing to his will. His events were on his timetable. And just like switching scenes, his eyes were everywhere, a stroke of the pen of his will, and everything went his way. He could kill the characters any time, in any way that he chose. If that was why people turned to a life of crime, he fully understood it, and he loved it. He rolled the crystal ball around in the palm of his hand as if it were an oversized diamond. It was fun to have eyes everywhere, like a supernatural big brother, but it wasn't enough. He had to have his hands everywhere too. He wanted to do it all from his armchair, so that all he had to do was his hands was lift cheesy puffs to his mouth. The first transaction on the dark web went great. The next one would certainly be even better. Again, he navigated into the dark alleys of the internet with eager, fat fingers on his keyboard. The digital swarm of cannibals, drug dealers, and child molesters was starting to feel more like home. He found the same dealers before. Hey, buddy, I've got another business proposition for you. Hello, brother. What do you need? That crystal ball is a fucking gem. I need to do more than see shit from a distance. I need something that will make me do shit. Stuff as serious as like choking this guy while he's recording his podcast or doing an interview. Podcast? Someone famous? The mere suggestion of Gary being famous sent a ripple of animosity through Tyler. He tried to choke it back, prevent himself from directing it at the wrong person. Remember, this guy was here to help him. I guess he's famous in a way. I don't see why that matters. It matters a lot, brother. Famous types usually have wards in place. I'll need to know who this is if I'm going to serve up something powerful enough to get past our defenses. You think nothing ever stands in my way in this line of work? Okay, but he's not really that famous. Tell me who it is. Assassinating the president and assassinating a bum in the gutter call for two entirely different approaches. He pretty much is a bum in the gutter. He just has a following is all. Tell me. His name is Gary Kolscher and he runs the Chilling Tales and Dark Frights podcast. The answer was delayed for so long that Tyler thought that his contact had just left the keyboard. I have just the thing that'll wipe this problem from the board. I want it to be fucking painful. Oh, don't worry. This will push all the limits of pain that a living human can process. Yes, please, lol. So what do you need from me? Like a personal possession of the target? I need a symbol of the intensity of your hatred for him. Really? It's that easy? What kind of symbol? I need you to cut off a finger or toe And you need to do it while thinking of how much you hate the target and then send it to me. Ooh, Tyler licked his lips. Is there anything easier? Tear off all your toenails while carrying out the same meditation. Tyler felt his junk retreat up next to his pancreas. Rereading. Tyler felt his junk retreat up next to his pancreas. I'm not sure if I can do all that. How about the toenails from just one foot? 10 is the number of completion in magic, so 5 won't cut it. How much will this one cost me in money? We'll talk remuneration later. For now, just get me the toenails. Tyler went to the junk drawer and got the only pair of pliers he had. He noticed for the first time just how rusty they were and stiff. Just totally unsuited to the job of anything surgical. He looked at his fingers and toe. Which one could he do without? No. Thought of singeing nerves and the deep down crunch in his bone that's connective tissue was just fucking no. He couldn't do it. A toe or a finger would never grow back. Toenails wouldn't either, but you know. He took off his shoes, which yawned plumes of stench up into his face. Socks were tossed aside in a damp heap. And there they were, like stale potato chips embedded in his hobbit toes. 10 hurdles of his willpower that would truly test the purity of his hate. 3 blinding hours later, he had accomplished what he set out to do. The only way his hate was still burning, one more time, the way his hate was still burning amazed him. Each hair of a toenail was like a jet lighter fluid on the coals of his animosity for Gary and his podcast and his precious family. He'd never admit it, but it almost felt good. The hate/pain dynamic. He had just enough medical tape and gauze left over from an old teenage injury to lap up his toes. He had just enough postage to mail the package from home. He sat down in front of his PC and decided that that's where he would stay for the rest of the week until his toes started smarting. He hit the tequila with the force of a head-on collision and began looking up what good old Gary had been up to. He had found the plaintive posts with the screenshots of his emails. Oh, that made his night. Made his aching toes feel better. That must have been how cats felt while approaching a cornered mouse. Alcohol guided Tyler's fingers across the keyboard once more. From dark shadow looming to Gary Kosher. Subject pity party for Gary the victim Kosher. Ha ha. We knew you'd go to social media and play the victim card. Are you the victim? Or is this karma? Do you remember how it felt in school when you were constantly bullied? Welcome to your new life. This isn't going away. You crying to your fans will just make the outcome even worse than what it's already going to be. Seeing you and your family soon. We live in your nightmare. DSL. He tapped the send button with the weight of a judge's gavel. Gary had been sitting at his PC for so long that his eyes began to look much like the cameras he had mounted all over the property, mechanical and empty. He had been cycling through feeds for hours, but it felt like minutes. Deep down, there was a part of him that wondered why he was letting this dark shadow character get the better of him. What had he actually done besides some cyber rattling? Anyone can get close to you and take pictures of you and your family. Had this guy actually done anything? There wasn't on a scratch on Gary, his son, or his wife. But that's exactly how he wanted to keep it. Part of him that was still processing the conscious thought reflected on the prison of fear that is occupied by a man married with children. At any given moment, there were parts of him he would eventually have to allow out of his sight. And if anything ever happened to those parts, he'd never be the same. He would tear the world apart with his bare hands and then just dump off a cliff. The pre-C screen continued cycling through video feeds, each one as still as a photo. Officer Colton Phelps was at the detective's desk looking over the material in the recent Kosher family case. There wasn't much. A couple of photos and a handful of emails and testimony. One more time. A couple of photos and a handful of emails and the testimony of a father in distress. Colton didn't like the way things like this couldn't reach him anymore. Oh, sure, he felt bad for Mr. Kosher, but nothing struck deep down anymore. He'd been struck too many times, and the scar tissue in the region of his soul was thickening and thickening and thickening. He sighed and phoned the detective that on the desk, Joseph Calloway. Everything's a dead end, Joe lamented. That email address is just a few weeks old, and everything connected to it traces to Cambodia. The two men grunted about other details that didn't relate to the case, and then each were returned to their thoughts, forced to wait for something to happen, like Gary. Something was going to happen. Tyler's package arrived well after regular mailing hours. There was a knock at his door, but there was no one there, just the package. It was showtime. His toes were still throbbing, but they felt like the steady beat of the warm drum. One more time. One more time. His toes were still throbbing, but they felt like the steady beat of a war drum. They felt warm. They felt good. He had prepared for this by clearing up a space in his living room. All of his furniture was shoved up against the wall, so he had plenty of room to operate. He had a pretty good idea of what he was getting, and when he opened the box, he wasn't disappointed. There was a note. There was a small red velvet bag held shut with a drawstring, and there was a grimoire of 2 or 3 leaves. There was a small quartz crystal dish, almost like an ashtray. There was also a chill in the air as he opened the bag and peered inside. Tyler read the note several times. Hello, brother. Good job on the toenails. Your dedication to your hate deserves a little reward. Here's something that will get you some hired help. Don't you worry about a thing. Just put what's in the baggie in the dish and recite the incantation in the booklet until something special happens. Candles will help. You don't want to be in total darkness when shit starts to happen. When you notice that you have company, tell him what you want to be done, and I promise you that when he's done, it'll make Mason's work like a cocktail party. Be good. Candles were placed and lit. His mouth went dry. No, he couldn't get cold feet now. Not this so close to getting what he wanted. What he pulled all his toenails for. He started chanting, soft at first, but gaining clarity and volume as his determination grew. Just when he thought he'd been snookered into doing something ridiculous, he felt it. The room felt electric. The hairs on his skin vibrated to some silent sonic assault. A high decibel hum that couldn't be heard, only felt. The flames of the candles bent towards the one more time. The flames of the candles bent towards the chanter and the quartz dish. The clear crystal of the dish turned gray, then it turned black, and then it glowed one more time. Then it glowed red, like a vial of blood held up to the sunlight. It burst into a fountain of embers that traced out the shapes of invisible eyes in the air, before swirling into the shape of something very tall, very dark, and very evil. Luminous green eyes blinked in and out of existence all over its form. Caustic vapors puffed from its nostrils with each breath. Each short-lived eyeball stared into Tyler as a voice proclaimed, "Prophecy, the doom be to..." One more time. "Prophecy, the doom to be visited upon thy foes." Tyler salivated. "I want all of them eaten alive slowly. I want worms with teeth in their mouths and hooks in their bodies to gyrate their way into each one of them. Through their assholes. Yeah, that's it. Through their assholes. I want the inside of his urethra chewed and reamed. I want the pain to be amplified for all of them. Especially, I want that fucking Gary to have to watch it happen to his family. Eat off his eyelids so he can't close them as his precious family is eaten alive." Tyler's wishes became fervent and impassioned to the point he was spewing globs of saliva with each consonant. The motionless demon listened. Its body writhed as all the eyes closed, and the ebony skin began to wrap and warp and take on a ropey appearance like a twisted mop. The desired worms were forming out of its body. They moved in a corkscrew motion around each other. Oh yes, they were beautiful, Tyler thought. The most beautiful animals he'd ever seen. They each emitted tiny whistling hisses. They spun down the demon's legs and across the floor towards the door. Tyler was debating taking a video when he felt something wrap around his ankle. He instinctively cried out as the hooks on the worm's body dug into his skin. His movements helped nothing as the black segmented body of the creature bored it into his calf and began an agonizing mining expedition around the bone and up his leg. That's when he noticed it wasn't just one errant hellworm. The entire host was turning from the door and converging on him. His last sane perception was the rumbling chuckle of the demon as the assault on Tyler's lower aperture began. His muscles puckered against the pain. One more time. His muscles puckered against the pain worse than rusty razors. I'm gonna hate reading this. His anus was the diameter of a golf ball. Within seconds, his flesh and muscle tissue were raked away by the hunger of the swarm. One of the little darlings explosively punctured up through his pelvis, his lungs, and his esophagus, and into his mouth, to share the flavors of being had at the party in the basement. Then his tongue was next, and the bone and cartilage just behind his nasal cavity. The slow demolition of a urethra was the point where he was sandblasted, and his shattered ego sputtered on the floor for consciousness. Wanting to go back to the womb, wanting for someone to tell him that everything would be okay, that everything would only hurt for a little while. Just a little while. Go to sleep, baby. Be good. Be good. Weeks passed. Gary was as vigilant as ever, but the tension started leaving his shoulders. He began falling asleep at the PC while watching the video feeds. There were no more emails from Dark Shadow. The static survival instinct fell into a dull roar, and the lives of the Kosher family were more or less returned to normal. A box arrived one day, addressed to Gary. It was wrapped in a very feminine floral print wrapping. It contained a note along with a smaller box. Hello, brother. Don't worry, I'm not who you think I am. We interacted briefly online during your time of crisis. When you were troubled with a certain pretentious dark shadow, I offered you my service, free of obligation, and you gave me the green light. So allow me the singular joy of telling you that your antagonist won't be bothering you ever again. I am a huge fan of what you do. I, too, am a storyteller. I just prefer to show rather than tell. You'll see what I mean when you open up the box. You have a little more freedom with your style of storytelling, so by all means, keep up the good work and I'll help out however I can. If you feel like you need to share any of this with the police, don't hesitate. No sense in keeping them up on a case that's as good as closed. Be good. P.S. Keep the dark on for me. Gary eyed the small box warily. It was made of ivory and it had an antique air about it. The lid opened with a soft click. As soon as recognition hit Gary, he dropped the box on the floor and made a dash for his phone to call the police. Inside were 10 bloody toenails glazed in rancid semen. And that is everything for tonight, guys. My goodness, those were certainly some kinds of stories, weren't they? One about some kind of horrible demonic creature living in a sinkhole that kills kids, and one about some kind of magic man who took advantage of a very stupid idiot who was stupid enough to believe that his adversaries wouldn't also have ways of dealing with him. It was awful. It was truly and honestly awful. There was a lot of things in these stories I wish I hadn't read. But that's the price of admission we pay sometimes on the Penelope Possum channel. Almond-studded shit. Yeah, there was some very colorful language in these stories, wasn't there? I don't know how I managed to find 2 such profanity-laden stories, but they were very good. They were both genuinely scary, with a lot of twists and turns. Anyways, I think that'll be it for us tonight. Catch me on the channel tomorrow with the upload of this edited down for time and to take out pauses, mess ups, etc. And good morning, good evening, good night, good afternoon. Whatever time it may be, wherever you be viewing from, have a good time of it. Be good people. Stay out of car engine compartments. Stay out of traffic. Stay hydrated, everybody. I must go. Return to my pile of garbage. I'll catch you guys on the flip-flop next week. You guys have a good night as well. Day or night. You guys take it easy and have fun as well. Peace out.